Welcome to the Career Coven, the podcast for serious careers with unserious chat. I'm Bec, a coach, corporate citizen, and recovering perfectionist.
And I'm Annie, workaholic, slowly learning boundaries. Each episode, we unpack career challenges and workplace wisdom through honest conversations, practical tools, and a healthy dose of real talk, so you can thrive on your own terms. Let's get into it today. So, Bec, how are you? How have you been?
How have I been, Annie? I've been great. It's been quite a while since we've done this. It feels like we've just reconnected through the computer after such a long time. And so much has happened and changed since we last recorded almost a year ago.
I know it's like we're so deeply out of practice that hopefully everyone will forgive us. But yeah, lots of people have asked me in a good way about the podcast over the last few months. And I was like, we actually haven't recorded anything for so many months because we packed season 2 into the pre-baby, pre-new job phase, which was in true Bec style, incredibly efficient and effective. So well done us. But yeah, I'm very well. I'm very well. Talk to me about what's changed in your life. Talk to us all. What's changed?
Okay.
What's the updates?
What's the update? So since we last recorded, my baby arrived, of course. Sweet little man. I love him so much. And I've also never been more tired in my entire life. It's been, we're recording this at 6 months. He's just like a gorgeous little smiley man. He loves everyone. He gets confused when members of the public don't smile at him. He's just
Love
great.
that. He is such a smiley little man. He's my favourite.
He's really chunky and really big and really robust. And we've just started Solid and it's mad and messy and wonderful and great. So yeah, really totally obsessed with my child. That's obviously an original thought as a mother. But yeah, it's been like a big journey. I think motherhood was in some ways really similar, in some ways really different to what I expected. A huge change. And I don't yet know what that means for me for work because I'm still off work at the moment. I've got a few more months before I'm planning on going back. So working through, I think, what this whole period means for shifts in identity, but we could just talk about that for forever. So what's been happening with you, Annie?
Yeah, I got married. And as you can hear, Susan's very happy about it in the background. Always getting on the podcast, Susan, always. But yeah, just got married and that's a real delight. And started a new job, which is not that new anymore because of what we just said about how long it's been. But that has had its own kind of challenges, learnings, epiphanies along the way, which has been interesting. I tend to be someone, as we've talked about before, that quite likes change and moving and doing new things. But I would say this one has been really, really quite a new set of learnings I've got from this job so far. So yeah, there's lots to unpack over the course of the season. But overall, personal life, I would say, is probably the main highlight. I'm a married woman now.
Oh.
And yeah, not something I actually always thought I'd do. But I guess he's pretty decent. He's such an obvious man to marry. That's what I keep saying. It's just yeah, of course.
He's a no-brainer, that guy.
He is a no-brainer. Even on the day I was it's a bit annoying that I didn't pick someone that's a bit more left field or bit of a surprise. But I'm it's so obvious that this is exactly the man that anyone would marry, but definitely I would marry. So
he's definitely your Ken.
He's my Ken, and he's been that since early doors. So yeah, what a nice thing.
Oh, so much. Okay. I mean, we'll span out our chat over the whole season. So let's not give our listeners all of the good bits now, because otherwise I'm going to have nothing to say next week other than that I still haven't slept, but I love my baby a lot. That'll be great.
And I want you to know, I really do want you to know that we're all completely fine with you saying how you haven't slept and how you love your baby. It's allowed to creep in. Don't worry.
Great. Okay. Thanks. I appreciate that. You, Annie, are definitely privy to my sleeping habits because I watch Married at First Sight when I'm awake at 2 a.m. and message Annie just a bit of commentary, unsolicited. I hope your phone's on Do Not Disturb.
It is always on Do Not Disturb. And also, I think that that's like a quite an apt way to get into the conversation topic of today,
Mm.
because part of my personal career board, which is or personal advisory board, which is what we're going to be speaking about today, is actually a WhatsApp group which started because of maths, and that is something I'm particularly proud of.
It's a great WhatsApp group. So just for the benefit of the listeners, it also involves Claire from season 2, and it's a lovely, lovely trio of really supportive career chat and married at first sight commentary. The perfect balance. So yeah, good segue. Let's just start with what's on the agenda for our topic of building your personal advisory board. So, we're going to cover what that board is on the feed, what are the expert takes on personal advisory boards, why women need one and what makes a good one, and then some practical discussion on choosing and engaging your board and navigating boundaries and long term relationships. And we'll give you a recap at the end. Too long didn't listen on
Nice.
our kind of favourite take in our summary.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Great. Okay. What is a personal advisory board, Annie?
So, I think there are like more formal definitions, and maybe you should cover those back because I think you have done more research into this than me. But I would just think of it as a group of people that you go to for like career advice, and definitely like more career specific advice than like life advice. It's not like a therapist or a coaching like scenario, and it's not like a formal board in my mind. It's not like you convene your board to meet every 6 weeks to discuss like whether you've progressed in the way that you expected. I think it's more an informal group of people who you seek advice from, who know you, who understand you, and you know them, and you can seek specific benefits from their wisdom, from their expertise in a certain area, and you have kind of chosen them as someone that you think can give you specifically like very useful advice. So that's how I would think of my own personal advisory board. What about you, Beck?
Quite similar to you for me. And we can get into kind of how that's composed and like how do you recruit and so on. I think the concept of a board was originally proposed by Jan Teresi Mokwa in her book Building Career Equity. And this was actually, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, maybe I should read that. And then I was like, oh, fuck no. I think it was like a professional services book from
Yeah.
at least 1 decade ago, which just didn't feel like it was going to be a contemporary literature to bank in. But the idea is that it's just a network of individuals who are advisors to you, and that's what kind of HBR defines it as. And they use the word expansive, which I think is quite interesting. Just thinking about getting a wide breadth of coverage and advice on that. I think technically there's quite a wide spectrum of how people interpret what a board is and how it's structured and how formal or informal it is. I do not know anyone who has a really formal board.
Me
I think
neither.
I think that would be kind of weird. But I did in the HBR article that I'd read that some people do have actual kind of frequency and cadence and a strategy around it in a way
Mm.
that I don't, and maybe I should. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what sort of person you are, right? Like I'm sort of someone who I think doesn't face into issues until they're like right up in front of me. And so I guess what I'm saying is like I'm quite reactive, I think, and we've maybe covered that in some of our previous episodes about like career planning and stuff like that. So I think I would find it really challenging to formalize my board, because I think that might be linked to having a very structured plan of like where you want to go. But it is interesting to think about like there might be scenarios when that is the case. Like if I set my sights on like a certain promotion or a certain like skill I wanted to develop, maybe there would be a kind of use case for more planning and structure around it. But because I am someone that tends to just work like reactively and like sort of plan my life quite reactively, I think I would find it hard to like structure it out. Whereas actually, given that you are someone that plans more, I it's kind of curious to, yeah, I'd be curious to get your take on whether you think that would work for you, having something more structured.
Yeah, I'm kind of like confused at myself that I haven't done this. It sounds like a really me thing to do, but 2025 me has fuck all time. So
Yeah.
maybe not something that I will do, but for now, I think the way that I've done it is more organic, and I think that's maybe a slightly different reframe of reactive. But over time, over my career, I think there have been people whose advice I really trust, and you meet more people and you gather more people in your network. And I actually hate the word network. I think networking is yucky in a kind of stigmatized way. I think it's actually just about like the relationships that you build and how and when you call on them,
Yeah.
which to me sort of feels more, it sits more naturally with me that I have had good relationships with people in a working context whose opinions I really value, and
Mm.
the relationship has to be sufficiently good that you can call on them in a personal capacity rather than like I'm me in my job asking you a question about my job and we're in the same organization or something.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting way to sort of think about it, because I think if I took that lens, that would broaden my board. You see what I
Mm.
mean? Because I think, yeah, and we should get on to like who's in boards typically for people and who's in ours. But I think that I actually probably do seek advice from specific people I've worked with in the past more frequently. But when I think about personal advisory board, I was thinking about like 4 or 5 very specific people, you included.
Mm.
But the way you phrased it, of like people that you respect, that you like would seek out, but that you think they would be giving you their time on a like personal, not sort of formal mentoring or formal coaching basis, then that would actually broaden probably who would be in my overall like broader board, and than just these kind of core people that I think I go to very, very regularly.
Mm. Yeah, I do think there's a sort of, I don't think there's a unilateral sort of person profile on the board, because for each type of person, there's probably a different way of communicating with them, a different frequency. So actually, I think that's probably quite a distinction, important distinction to make around treating them all in the way that's appropriate to that relationship. Should we talk about what's on the feed and what the experts are talking about? There's, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounce her name,
Mm.
Hermania, not sure, Ibarra.
Yeah.
We like what she says. So she's London Business School, INSEAD, Harvard formerly, and she specialises in organisational behaviour. And so her take on this is that the board needs to be comprised of both mentors and sponsors, which I think is a really interesting angle to take, because when I think about my board, I actually think there's probably not that many sponsors on there. And she also suggests that this is particularly helpful for women who are navigating non-linear career paths. And actually, a lot of the literature talks about particularly returning to work from career gaps,
Mm.
as well as more generally changing career paths and pivoting, and how you kind of need to pivot who's on that board according to the direction that you're going in, because that always changes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you make of Herminia?
As someone on a non-linear career path, I would definitely say that it resonates. Like the people I go to now are definitely very different to the people I went to when I had a more kind of corporate, I guess I started off as a management consultant or a long time ago. And those people would be giving me like totally different advice to like the people I would seek advice from now. So yeah, I think that really resonates. And I definitely can say that from the point of a past life being a female founder, which is a very non-linear career path, it's like a very uncertain career path. It's like it was not something I did well, surrounding myself with like mentors, informal mentors, people that had like done this before, people that could give me advice. Like I did it really badly. I would say I actually kind of was so all in that I didn't really look up and ask for help and support. But I think that would have been really, really valuable for that chapter of my career, to have not loads, I don't think I would have had the energy or the time for like loads of people, but to have even one or two, advisors, mentors, advocates.
Yeah, I was about to say, what if you were doing it again, what is the profile of person that you would have found most helpful at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that I did try and find a female founder that had raised a VC round that was a few years ahead. And I emailed a few people, and most people came back, but everyone is so time poor. And that is a fucking small group of people. That's like 10 women in the country or something at the time at which I did it. It was just so small. And I think I had Alice, who you spoke to, who was really great as a kind of support, but we were on like almost exactly the same trajectory. If anything, I raised like a little bit before her. And I had like one other person who also raised for a very similar type of business, who was great, actually, in fairness. But I think what I was looking for is I was just looking for someone just a few years ahead, because I was terrified about things like fundraising. I was like, who do I talk to about the fact that 80 to 90% of the conversations I have, I feel like not only do people not care what I'm saying, but they actually don't even understand the topic I'm talking about at all, which was menopause at the time. And yeah, I kind of wanted someone that had done that. So like had been talking to investors, but about something that generally investors don't know anything about. It's like how to do that, how much time does it take, how to prepare yourself mentally. But yeah, everyone I reached out to, they were really nice, they're really kind, but they just said like, I'm so sorry, because I would actually love to help like other people that are earlier than me, but I just don't have any bandwidth. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, because I probably, had I continued on that path, wouldn't have had much bandwidth either. So, but yeah, that's what I was looking for, was just looking for someone who'd like been there and done it, and who you could go to when you were like, oh my God, I'm going to quit. And they'd be like, yeah, that's totally normal to feel like you're going to quit at all times as a founder, but you're probably not. Like, you're probably not. Or maybe there's scenarios where it's an interesting thing to explore whether you actually should, if it's not working. But like I didn't find many of those successfully. But I think it would have been super impactful. And even when I think about those two people, Alice and this other person, like they effectively were on my advisory board. And actually it was invaluable having some people at the same stage as me to just vent to and say like, it's okay. Anyway,
Yeah,
that was a bit of a
I
ramble.
do I do think there is space for peer group members. Peers? There's space for peers on a board, for sure.
Yeah.
There was one other bit of interesting reading around this topic which really struck me, and actually I should have said this up the top in my updates, but I've just completed training to become an executive coach. Yay, coaching. Enjoyed my conversation with Seb so much in last season. No, it's something I've really wanted to do for a long time, so I'm really chuffed about it. And I had done an exercise with a client this week around it, which was really powerful. So the concept is about inner mentor. It's a phrase and a concept by a woman called Tara Mohr, Mohr, if you want to Google it. And it's so the concept here is that it's not just about external advisors, but it's also about self-mentoring and kind of activating that. So the example of client work that I was doing this week was around someone who was at a bit of a crossroads in their career and wasn't sure quite how they were going to get to the next stage and what that looked like. And I think it was really helpful for them to think about themselves in a number of years' time. You don't have to kind of, as a coach, you don't say what the number is, but they could be like, this could be you in 20 years' time, or it could actually be you in 12 months, whatever is the helpful time frame. And what would that person say to you? And what is the profile of that person then? So like Annie in 12 months' time, she's looking at you now going, oh, if only Annie now knew this, like she's so clever and she's so bright and she's struggling with this thing, but she's handled it before, and etc. etc. And I think part of that exercise is, visioning for yourself and helping get a bit more clarity on what's ahead. But it's also about acknowledging that even if you have questions or things that you're struggling with, you are yourself actually a really good resource, not just externals, and you are able to kind of cultivate within yourself an answer. It's just a helpful way of kind of eliciting it.
Yeah, God, I've been looking for my inner mentor. I've been looking for it for like, how old am I? 34. I've been looking for it for at least 30 years. When I was 4, I started looking for it. No, I think this is a really useful concept, and it's definitely something I wish that I was like better at, like self-reflection, but from a vantage point that is like you in the future and what you think is important to you. I think if I did that, I would be, and I'm going to do it after this, but I think if I did that, I would be
We
much
can do it
calmer.
together afterwards.
Yeah, we can do it together afterwards. That'd be great. But like, I think I would be much more calm and like long term, because I am so short in general. Everything's so reactive all the time. And like working in the kind of business I do, which is a kind of startup scale up thing, everything feels like frantic on a day-to-day basis. And I think something both me and my partner really struggle with is like any semblance of like, will this matter in 5 years? Like, is this actually as truly big a deal as it feels like today? And I think often the answer would be it's probably not in my case. So this is interesting.
Yeah,
Tara,
we
well
like
done,
Tara.
Tara. Yeah.
Liked that a lot from her. Okay, let's talk about why we think women need a board and what makes a good board.
Yeah, so I mean, why women need one, from my perspective, is just very simple and maybe reductively simple, the statement. But it's like we just face more challenges in the workplace. Just fact. There's
Mm.
just more to navigate. There's more bias. There's more uncertainty. You're paid less. Next. Like, therefore, more challenge, like more value from having people help you with what is just factually kind of more challenges, systemic challenges that face you. What do you think? Why do women need one?
Yes, and I also, as someone who's now on mat leave, I think what I need from a board and the composition of that board is evolving. And actually, some people who I probably would have had in my board, but in a sort of less involved capacity, I'm finding myself calling on mat leave to kind of help me not through like mat leave brain and mat leave and work and all of those kind of existential questions from people who have been through it, because it is just a whole different set of challenges psychologically and physically and like, you know, hormonally. But also, you know, from the conversation from Alice last year, she spoke really beautifully about how she was just trying to find people who had already solved some of the very routine
Yeah.
problems so that you expand your data points and options on how you do things. So there's definitely, my board has already changed because I'm on mat leave, and I'm sure will change again, but it's because it is, as you say, this is a point in time set of circumstances where, as we know, the data shows careers can really take a brutal hit for women in particular on parental leave. So it's kind of interesting going through that and holding that narrative in your head and then being like, I also don't want that to be me, and I'm going to do everything I can for it not to be me, but also that's not really in my control sometimes, if not a lot of the time. So yeah, I think there are definitely unique situations in which women need to have very specific assistance that they wouldn't get otherwise. And I also that it's, I think we've spoken about this a lot, but over indexing on something that you feel might be a bit challenging, and you're less likely to ask for help, and actually over indexing on asking for help and advice sometimes can be really good just to get an exposure and view range of viewpoints. But yeah, also too much advice is shit sometimes. So I think there's a time and a place for
Mm.
it.
Yeah, and then I think the final thing from my perspective on why women might benefit from this sort of structure a bit more is I do think women, is this a generalization? Anyway, if it is, you can call me up on it. But I think women like to talk about things. Women like to talk through important things, or that's my experience of working with majority women and being one myself. Whereas I do think that men sort of, it's a little bit more like, oh, if 1 + 1 = 2, you have to find 1 + 1 and then it equals 2. And because there maybe are less challenges systemically for men, I just think there's something about like women liking to process information, decisions by like talking about them.
Yes. I mean, it's a really like, again, I'll stop talking about my baby at some point, but we have a parents group of like people who live locally to us, and there's a like mum and dad chat where everyone's in there, and then there's been a mum splinter group, and the mum splinter group is like extremely active,
Yeah.
and the mum and dad group is like, should we go to the pub in 3 weeks? Okay. So as a very specific data point, I would concur with that. Okay, let's talk about good boards and choosing and engaging your board. So who should be on it?
I don't think I could answer who should be on it for an individual. So I think it is like really, really personalized who is on it. If I were to think through who is on mine, I like would say people who are ahead of you, definitely very useful in an avenue that you find relevant to your own career plan or your own current situation. I also think people where you like deeply respect, like something that you know that they have done or like a decision that they've made, particularly if that specific decision is again very relevant to like what you're trying to work through. And then this is maybe a bit generic, but I also think like people with time to like be on it, because I get sometimes asked, as I'm sure you do, to be a kind of mentor, or yeah, to be a mentor really in some way to a lot of people that I barely know. And I just don't have time. And that's not like a twatty thing to say. It's like, I barely have time to speak to my best friends. So I think it is important that it is like a two-way, someone that you think wants to be and has the time to be someone on your board. But it doesn't, as I think we've already covered, but it doesn't have to be like formal. You don't like have to ask them to be like on your board and give you this much time. It doesn't have to be as like formal as that. But I think overall, like someone respecting the decisions of a person and the relevance of those decisions, someone like people who are a bit ahead of you or that you think are ahead of you in a relevant field, and then people that have the time to give you the advice and time that you need.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I would also add like a slightly different lens of just like defining what it is for yourself that you feel like you need. I think that different board members for me have totally different functions. Like some are just basically to emotionally back me and give me a bit of like moral support, regardless of what I've done or what decision I make. Like there's like a cheerleading camp. I'd say that's like my mum and like some friends who will always be on my side. Then there's like a camp of like people who will help me pick through objectively what's going on and help me navigate it and be really savvy about it. And then there's like a camp of people who will think about me as a whole person rather than me as this job and be like, you've got a young family.
Yeah.
Have you thought about how this might work? Or you seem really burnt out. I'm just doing a well-being check on you. So I think there are different camps who provide completely different things. And again, I think I'm taking quite a wide definition of what the board is, but I would definitely agree with you from that kind of really professional bit in the middle, people who see you, see your strengths, understand you, understand the logic and your thinking and I do think you kind of have to express what your ambition is to your board. You have to be able to articulate that to then enable them to help you answer whatever question you're thinking about. I don't necessarily think that just having someone and calling them and being like, can we talk about me for a bit?
Yeah. No.
Generally, like I do think you have to call on the board with a topic.
Agreed.
And the topic can either be something that's live and hot, which I'd say is, I treat our WhatsApp group like that.
Yeah, me too.
But then like I also called on my board when I was thinking about starting my coaching training, and like there was an investment to that, and just like practically what's long gaming. I had a conversation with you about it, and you're like, it's really good for optionality, not something that I had thought about. So I think there's space for both those kind of reactive things, but also whenever it is in your life that you do take those moments to take a step back, and I'm going to try and not sound like too much of like a nerdy life planner, because that would be mischaracterizing what I do. But whenever might be at New Year's, or maybe you do like your own quarterly review or half yearly review or whatever, whenever you're reflecting on those things, I kind of treat that as a moment to be like, what are the questions that I don't feel I can answer myself, and who can help me answer them?
Yeah, I think you're definitely, for me, the holistic. You're obviously many things to me, but you are my person that's like, you have a life and it's not just your job. Like, don't be insane. So that's helpful. I would definitely say that for me, my mum is interesting. She's definitely on the board. My mum is like, she's chair. She's
100%.
chair of the board. But my mum is like quite. She's not just like, she is a cheerleader. She is my cheerleader. But she's also just quite like, don't be stupid.
In only a way that your parent can say to you, right?
And my mum is really funny because she's totally different she's on the career board for both me and my brother, but she has just a completely different attitude towards both of us. So with him, she's always like, are you sure it's a big step? Like, can you do this? Whereas with me, she's like, you can literally do anything. And I'm like, I wonder how. Because he has so much more, like he's achieving so much, he's doing so well, but also like he is kind of progressing up in a way that's quite linear. And so you would just think like, yeah, he can do it. Like he's doing the job, he's doing the work, and then he's getting more opportunity. Whereas, yeah, it's just funny. She's a chair of the board on both, but she just takes a very different approach. And then on my partner is also on my board, but in like quite a formal way. He takes it like a board role on a startup. So
that like completely doesn't surprise me. He's corporate Ken, but
he's
like
corporate Ken.
startup. I don't know what the right word is. We'll come up with something else. But
yeah, he's always like, he gives very, very good advice. I'm very lucky. But he also gives like completely black and white. Like no, it's just, and there's like no nuance, there's no emotion, there's nothing. He's like, that sounds wrong, you must do this. And I'm like, you make it sound so easy. But it ain't. But it's good because I think I do have like quite a well-rounded mix of like across the board. They're all bringing their own little part. I sort of know what that part will be, but it fills all the areas that you said of like cheerleader, much more structured, maybe like expertise driven, and then the like almost coaching life person that's like, hold on. Yes, we're talking about your career, but like, are you okay? To which the answer with me is usually no, I'm not okay. Anyway, what about you? Does that resonate with you? Do you have siblings, parents, partners? Are they part of your board?
They're all part of the board. They all play their own sort of like pantomime role. Mum is my cheerleader, and I'm so grateful to have had a childhood where mum just tells me she's proud of me for like everything. It's just so sweet. She's so lovely. My dad is a really hard-nosed negotiator.
So that's where you get it from.
100%. There's never been a doubt about it. My sister, she's 7 years older than me, and she has a career and a family, and she's already done that transition. I learned a lot from her, and, navigating childcare options, and, whether you reduce your hours or you don't, or those sorts of things, and in a kind of older sister way, which, I'm really grateful for too. My partner is definitely on my board. I think he's there in a stopping self-limiting beliefs way. So, but I'd say cheerleader, but that's not really him.
No.
That's not his style.
No, agreed.
again, it's a bit like your mum, like the don't be stupid, but it's more like, yeah, of course you could do that. And why would you think that you couldn't? Just like in a really understated,
Yeah. Matter of
understated way.
fact.
Yeah. But also the person who, when I'm like getting upset about something, he'll just be like, well, that person's just being crackers, just ignore them. In a way that like sometimes is really helpful, and then sometimes I get really irritated. Like I think I told you we were on holiday. I was like irrationally irritated at our hotel neighbour because she was really
You did.
rude.
You did tell me this, yeah.
And I spent about 3 hours like wondering whether I should throw her shoes in the pond. And Tom was like, I think you need to drop it. And I was like, I don't know, Tom. I don't know. So
sleep deprived. I wouldn't cross you if you were doing that. I'd be like, yeah, just put them in. Go on if it makes you feel better.
yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, there's a bit of a thrill to it. Anyway, I'd say probably keeps me regulated.
Yeah.
On a day-to-day level, which is very important. So let's say to our listeners, maybe they haven't got a board. I actually think probably a lot of the listeners have a board. They just haven't referred to it as a board before. But, you know, a little council of people. Let's say they have someone they want to be on their board.
Mm-hmm.
How would you advise them going about it?
I would say you don't have to make it like this very formal invitation. As you've said, most people don't even recognize that they have a board. So I just think of it as like maybe seeking advice, and depending on the relationship to that person. Like if it were me and you, obviously I'd just be like, I need to talk to you about this. Would you be up for that? But if it was someone that I'd worked with in the past that was more senior than me, I would probably still keep it like quite informal, like I'd text or WhatsApp them or whatever. But I would be like, you know, do you have the time? I would massively appreciate your view on this. Here's a bit of context to like what I'm going through, why I've asked you, and how like actually kind of how much time I'd like. And that sounds maybe a bit formal. Like, this is the problem. This is why I picked you, and this is I'd like half an hour. But it would be something like, hey, I'm looking to progress into this role. I know you've had experience of that, but there's this specific challenge with my manager that I'd love to speak to you about because you've managed me before. And it would probably only take 15 or 20 minutes, but I just really appreciate your advice. And that would be a way. And if it's relevant to then like keep catching up, I think if it's someone that is like right for you, wants to be on your board, it's probably quite a natural progression to being like, hey, are things okay? Like after that initial conversation, I don't think everything has to be really structured, really formalized, really planned, unless you want to take the more formal board structure that we referred to at the start, in which case I think it's probably similar, but maybe you're saying like, I'd love to talk to you at a specific time. And like, you know, you basically put more of an agenda around this discussion and more structure around the ask. But I'd probably encourage people to keep it quite chill on the first approach, because like people will keep talking to you and keep investing in you if they get something from it themselves, whether that's like a feel good factor or actually like they find the conversation interesting and useful to them and they learn something. So I think my advice would be to keep it pretty relaxed and then see how it evolves.
I totally agree with you. Something that you said there reminded me that actually I'd say I have a lot of former line managers on my board, to the extent that like a number of them are just friends who I really love now that enough time has lapsed between us working together, but I also loved working with them too. And I think line managers are such a good source of like, they've been through a whole period of time with you. They know how you think and operate. They know kind of the light you shine, the shadow you cast, and the things that worry and motivate you. I think they're a really deep source of support. I agree with you on the time thing. I think I try and have like a one-off conversation if I feel like I need a conversation. Like I remember a period of earlier in my career, and actually I think you need a board earlier in your career than perhaps you need as frequently later, when everything does seem a bit more confusing and you're still working out what you like and don't like. Calling one of my old bosses to talk about whether I should go into consultancy because she had been a consultant before. And, you know, like that's like, I think I had that conversation in like 2017. and I've had coffee with her a couple of years ago. Like, it's a really infrequent check-in, but it's normally quite intentional, and making sure, I guess this is coming on to one of our later points, but we can talk about it now. Like, I take a really long-term view on the relationships that I have. And, you know, there are people who are on my board who have been on there for like much longer than a decade, who I feel like I can still call on because we have built that relationship and established a connection that feels meaningful to us both. And in a way that I always like to let them know that I really admire and take inspiration from how they operate in XYZ. And I think that's such a rich learning, but it's also, it's quite flattering, isn't it?
Totally. It is flattering. And also, I think that most great managers do really invest in you as a human. And so it's just like a natural thing, isn't it? It's just a natural evolution of like when you leave a place. If it's been a really strong relationship, they still want you to succeed and thrive. Yeah, I think that is a really natural way to form like a chunky part of your board. And I would say the same. Like when I think about that wider board, it's definitely, there's a significant number of former line managers or people I worked with very closely on it.
What would be your view on boundaries and long-term relationships, just to round off our discussion questions about boards?
Well, I guess as someone with not very good boundaries, what I would say is, I think the ideal is to nurture these relationships, but in a way that is sustainable for what you can give. So I certainly am not amazing at sustaining very active relationships. And that's because I live my life at I think, a kind of exhausting pace. And it's definitely something I would like to change, is kind of better maintenance of important relationships. But then I also think that people that know me really well, that would be part of my advisory board, know this about me. They just know that I will be like off trying to do some intense thing, and that it's not intentional, that I've like not checked in. But I think that it's good to make it clear like what you can give if possible. So especially if it's someone you know less well. So just being able to say, I'd love to check in with you in a few months, or like it would be so helpful if we could maybe check in every 6 months. I think that is a really like lovely informal way to just state like the frequency that you're expecting of them, but also that you can give them. Yeah, I think that I've never mastered it myself, but I've been on the receiving end of people with very good boundaries asking for stuff like this. And I'm like, yeah, I can opt into that because it's clear what you expect from me. And I think that's quite good. Yeah, as someone that struggles overall with like having clear boundaries, I think I'm probably not as good at this as I would like to be. But I would try and just be deliberate about it. And if you can, just think, okay, with this person who is important, what do I want from them next? When? And is it appropriate to kind of say that explicitly?
Yeah.
Which it won't always be, because sometimes it can be super informal.
Yeah, I also think, like, I used to work for a diplomat, and the way that she handles this I really like, which was basically, it's a very like government way of handling a timeline, which is basically naming the season in which you want to catch up. So just being like, yeah, it'd be great to see you. Let's get something in for autumn. And that allows a bit of flexibility closer to the time to just like test when works. And actually, if I'm asking for your help in autumn, like it's maybe more helpful in like this milestone that happens in October than it is a different time. So it gives a bit of flexibility on both sides, which I find quite a natural, nice way of expectation management on frequency. I think that's really nice.
Yeah.
This conversation has made me realize that I don't really have any sponsors on my board. And I think sponsorship is kind of interesting. So for the listeners who don't know, sponsors sort of differ to a mentor in that they're both typically more experienced or more senior, not necessarily for mentors, but the sponsor is someone who's basically sort of looking out for you, tends to be in the same organization, but could be in the same industry, someone who's happy to sort of pull a few strings to help you get ahead and so on. Sponsors aren't something that like I necessarily I don't know that I have sponsors, or if I have sponsors, they're really quiet at pulling the strings, which I'm really grateful for. I had someone when I quit, I won't say who, a CEO of an organization, say, "You had the CEO as your sponsor." And I was like, "You didn't fucking tell me." I was like, how do I know?
So, to recap on this week's episode, we started off by covering what an advisory board is. No, we didn't make up the term. And we talked through some of the expert perspectives on having a career advisory board. And then we go into how to ask people to be on your advisory board, how to balance your advisory board, who should be on it, and also how frequently to keep in touch with your advisors and maintain relationships with them. Lastly, we talk through who's on our advisory board and why, as well as what we truly think the value of them is.
What's your top tip, Annie?
My top tip is don't create work for yourself. An advisory board should feel natural, sustainable, and think about the input that each member of your advisory board gives you. What is their angle for you, and what do you expect, like what are you needing to get from them? What about you?
I think my top tip would be making sure that your inner mentor is on your board. I do think there's a lot to be said for finding out an answer for yourself that can feel slightly more congruent than an answer compiled from 12 different answers of others. So I think also trusting yourself as a member of the board is really important. I think
Great.
that's it.
Perfect. So thanks for joining us today, as always. If something in today's episode resonated with you, please spread the magic. Share it with a friend, post it on your socials, leave a rating or review on the platform you listen to us on. That's how the Career Coven grows, and we would really appreciate your support. So until next time, see ya.
Bye.